All right, everybody, welcome to the Sheet Music Podcast. So, I've kind of wanted to do a podcast for a while because I figured it would be kind of fun, and I'm literally just gonna talk about whatever random stuff comes to mind. I mean, I've written down a couple of things, but we'll see really what comes of it. So for today, I want to talk about my top 5 favorite movie series. I love films. I love talking about films. I love learning about how films are made. I think it's really fun. I think it's something that I definitely enjoy a lot. So it's interesting to me to see what separates a good movie from a bad movie, and how issues with when a movie is being created or the people working on it, how those issues can lead to the final product. So to start off our list, my number 5, well, they're not really in any particular order, to be honest, but one of the 5 that's on the list is the How to Train Your Dragon podcast. Yes, good job, HC Music Stand. You're able to commentate. Now, the How to Train Your Dragon movie series, I absolutely love them. You're gonna find that a lot of my favorite movies are mainly animated, just because I don't know. I honestly think animation is a better medium for storytelling. I think it gives you a lot more freedom, a lot more expressiveness in what you can do. But How to Train Your Dragon, I watched the first movie when I was about 9 years old. Yeah, about 9 years old. I just exposed my age, but it's fine. I watched the first movie when I was about 9 years old. Second movie came out when I was 13. And then I kept seeing for the third movie that it was being delayed and delayed and delayed some more, and then delayed a little bit more, all the way until it came out in February of 2019. I watched that third movie 5 times in theaters. 2 of the times I had free tickets, but the other 3 times I paid the full price. Anyways, for me, the movies came out at the perfect time for me, because they're about coming of age and growing up and becoming your own person. And I think they do a great job of expressing that. And when you're growing up, there's a lot of the pressure on you you have to do this, and that. And you have to figure out who you're going to be, what you need to do with your life. And Hiccup in the first movie, he's still a kid. He doesn't really have any thoughts of his own. He just kind of does whatever his dad tells him to do, or at least tries to. But once he finds Toothless, that's his, almost like like the way he grows up is by taking care of Toothless and realizing that the dragons aren't actually monsters. They're just living beings trying to live just like everything else, and that given the right love and care, they can be friends with the Vikings, that like they can work together. And the whole movie is about him trying to convey that to his family, but also trying to find the right way to convey that to his family while still keeping it a secret, and trying to figure out how his dad would react to something as crazy as the Hiccup taming a dragon, pretty much. And for what it's worth, I have a Toothless plushie. It's sitting right next to me right now. I love the How to Train Your Dragon movie so much. The second movie takes place a couple of years later. His dad is still the chief, but this time he's thrown into the ring because his mom is still alive. Or he's thrown into the ring? Thrown into the ring. You know, I feel like this podcast is going to very quickly show how bad I am at, like, talking. But thrown into the ring. Not thrown into the ring. Throws him for a loop. Yes. English. It throws him for a loop because this person that he's thought is gone his whole life, he's accepted it, he's lived with it. All of a sudden, she's back now. His mother is still alive. And for what it's worth, I wish they'd played with that story arc more. I felt like it was very, oh, your mom's still alive. Oh, here's how she lived. Oh, okay. We're just gonna let you automatically accept that and have no problems with it. And not be like, oh, where were you my whole life? But my probably one of my favorite scenes in the series as a whole is when his dad Stoic finds his mom, or he sees his wife again for the first time, and his wife's like, don't be mad at me, like she's scared that he's gonna be mad at her, and all he does is sing to her and give her a hug. Like, I just loved that moment for Stoic, because we constantly see him as this like serious, untouchable guy, except for when it comes to his family. Like, for all of the hardships that he gives Hiccup, for all the trials that he gives him, he genuinely cares about his son. There's someone on YouTube that I like to watch called Cell Specs, and she made a video about animated, like, best animated dads. If I remember, I'll link it in the description of this. But she talked about Stoic, and I'm just like, yes, I agree. Yes, continue. She also talked about Fire Lord Ozai. I'm kidding. Fire Ozai is the worst. But anyways, and then there's this happy moment, this happy, like, reconciliation. The family is back together. We got the gang back together. But then, literally, like 30 minutes later in movie time, Toothless kills Stoic. And this is where we get to my one issue with the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. That there should have been more of a conflict between Toothless and Hiccup. Even though Toothless knows that Hiccup wasn't in control of his actions, that he was being controlled by the Alpha Dragon, I felt like there should have been more there. Hiccup should have had to take more time to reconcile about it, but also the movie needed to end with a big fight, so I get it. But I just wish there was more in, like, the third. I feel it, in retrospect, it does ripple more into the third movie, but not as much as I think it should have. Okay, now we can talk about the third movie. I love the third movie. It's so good. I have, like, art for it hung up on my wall. I very much like How to Train Your Dragon, in case you couldn't tell. But the third movie for me is perfect. It wraps everything up. I mean, we all knew going into it that the dragons were gonna go away. They were gonna go away from the humans. Like, okay, like, I understood that. I knew it going in when they, like, revealed, like, the hidden world and stuff. But I was not prepared for how much the movie was gonna hit me in the gut. I loved that movie so much. 5 times in theater. I still watch it, like, regularly, and it's still one of my favorite movies. The villain isn't great, but admittedly, he's not the focus point of the story. The focus point of the story is Hiccup and Toothless. But I love How to Train Your Dragon 3. I think it's a great movie. I think all 3 of them are really good, cohesive story. And, I mean, the TV shows are good, too. They made animated TV shows. The animation looks awful, but the TV shows are, like, they're pretty good. Okay, next on the list. Again, these are in no particular order. I'm just talking about them. Next on the list is another DreamWorks series called Kung Fu Panda. I love Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda is so good. It honestly hits a lot of the same beats as How to Train Your Dragon, but still manages to be so different. In particular, Kung Fu Panda 2 is my favorite, because where Kung Fu Panda 1 and 3 are lighthearted comedies, Kung Fu Panda 2, while keeping the same level of comedy, manages to tell a darker story about loss and family and how to deal with it in a healthy way. And it shows the contrast between Po and Lord Shen, played by the very legendary Sirius Black, by the way, Gary Oldman. But it shows the contrast because Shen thought that if he dealt his enemies a great loss, then they'd be too scared to fight back. But Po was able to learn through his found family that he has now that there's healthy ways to deal with grief, and there's proper ways to move on and to accept what's happened and to live with it. By the end of the movie, he's able to control, I forgot what it was, control his chi, I don't know, some mystic power that gives him the ability to just completely destroy Shen in a really amazing scene, by the way, that I might do a video on. You never know. But Kung Fu Panda 2 is leagues better than 1 and 3. So it boggles my mind when people are like, Kung Fu Panda 2 is the worst one. I don't like it at all. I think it's too dark. Kung Fu Panda 2 is like the perfect example of how to tell a darker story in a children's movie, but also still make it lighthearted and fun, and still give out this positive message of how to move on from grief. Okay, you'll notice I kind of rambled on about How to Train Your Dragon a bit, so I toned it back about Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda 1 is, like, they're great movies. Kung Fu Panda 3, honestly, just my only complaint is the too much comedy. Like, for a story about an evil ox played by J.K. Simmons turning people into jade zombies and then coming to kill everybody that Po loves, you'd think that it'd be a little bit more serious. And even the scene when Po becomes like the dragon warrior in the spirit realm is like, it's played for jokes, and I'm like, just because I felt like they saw the complaints that people had about 2, that it was too serious, so they're like, alright, we gotta load 3 with jokes. But okay, now we're gonna move on to a more expansive series. The MCU. The MCU is amazing. It's not perfect. I mean, they've made 23 movies, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's amazing what they've managed to do with them. It's like, even the first phase 1 alone is amazing, that they're able to tell this cohesive story that's connected, and everything works in tandem to build towards the big finish. It's amazing. I remember watching Avengers in 2012 as a kid and being like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then last year watching Avengers Endgame and being like, oh my god, this is also the coolest thing that I've ever seen. It's just crazy to me what they're able to do. How they've managed to build this world. The MCU is so special, and honestly, anybody who says that all the Marvel movies are the same, they clearly haven't watched all of them. Because if you're telling me that the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are the same as the Iron Man movies, which are also the same as the Black Panther movies, which are also the same as the Thor movies, I'm like, I truly can't see that. Guardians of the Galaxy is so unique and such a good story about found family. Admittedly, there are similarities between movies like Iron Man and Ant-Man, but they might hit the same story beats at times, but they're still very different characters. Paul Rudd, we're not going to call him his in movie character, we're calling him Paul Rudd, because Paul Rudd just plays Paul Rudd in every movie that he's in. But Paul Rudd, he is at his heart a good person. He just kind of got lost along the way. He made a lot of mistakes, but he still has the basics of being a good person. He cares about his family, he cares about his daughter. And Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, he is a jerk. Like, he is probably, at the start of Iron Man 1, he's the worst person. He's so rude with everybody. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. So anybody who says that the MCU is the same I truly don't see that. I really don't understand that mantra, that idea that all the movies are the same. Okay, I have to be very broad with the MCU because it's the MCU. I'm not gonna, like, it took me about 20 minutes to talk about 6 movies. If we sit here while I talk about every movie in the MCU, we'll be here a while. But real quick, for those of you who want to know which ones are my favorites, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are clearly my favorites. It goes Guardians of the Galaxy, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, and then everything else. Actually, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Guardians of the Galaxy, then everything else. Okay. So, we're going to talk about Star Wars now. And Star Wars, I'm going to spit out some hot takes, so don't come for me. Don't come for me because of what I'm about to say. The sequel trilogy is not as bad as everybody says it is. It's still bad. Don't get me wrong. The Force Awakens is good. The Last Jedi is good about 50% of the time. And then The Rise of Skywalker is just a dumpster fire in a dumpster fire in a flaming car wreck that's crashed into a runaway train. Yeah. Rise of Skywalker is bad. But I think Star Wars, like Marvel, is so special for what it's been able to do. I mean, there are people who are full-grown adults now who watched Star Wars when they were kids, when they were 5, 6 years old, and now they're taking their kids to see the new Star Wars movies. I think Star Wars is something special because everybody can enjoy it. Everybody can find something to enjoy in it, whether it be if you like video games, if you like TV shows, if you like movies, if you like books. There's dozens of Star Wars book series that you can read. I mean, I know when I was little, I used to read the Legends books about Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. I mean, they weren't Legends back then because Disney hadn't ruined everything yet. I just said that the sequel movies weren't that bad, and now I'm just ripping into Disney. It's fine. But anyways, the original trilogies were, with all their flaws, were amazing at the time, and they still are. They still hold up today. But they were amazing at the time because nobody had ever done anything like it before. It was so special, and it changed the game. I think the prequel trilogy had the potential to be something great. And I think there was supplemental material later on that improved them substantially. The Clone Wars. But ultimately they were held down because George Lucas thought that he could do them alone. I guess I don't know the full story. I haven't researched it. But from what I can tell, George Lucas thought he could do it by himself. But the reason that the original trilogy was so good is because there was people there to be like, George, if Anakin says that he doesn't like sand, it's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere, that's going to be a dumb line, George. I mean, even Harrison Ford and Luke Scott and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, they talked about in interviews. Also, I'm recording this on Carrie Fisher's birthday, so happy birthday, Carrie Fisher, I miss you. But they talked about in interviews how, they would yell at George and be like, George, this sounds dumb. You need to have my character say something coherent. But this prequel trilogies are, they were the Star Wars movies I grew up on. They're not great, admittedly. Revenge of the Sith is really fun because CGI lightsaber battles. But they're not great. Attack of the Clones is awful. I like The Phantom Menace more than I should because it was my first Star Wars movie. Basically what I'm saying is Phantom Menace was my first Star Wars movie, so it's got the nostalgia. Revenge of the Sith is fun action. Attack of the Clones is terrible and nothing about it is redeemable. On to the sequel trilogy. Oh, and my favorite one is The Return of the Jedi. My favorite Star Wars movie. Return of the Jedi. Okay. On to the sequel trilogy. Actually, first I want to talk about the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is so good. Admittedly, 60% of the Clone Wars is, actively bad. because there's like a 2-part episode where Jar Jar Binks teams up with Mace Windu to take down Darth Maul's mom. And if it sounds stupid, it's because it is. Yeah. It's really dumb. But if anybody's made it this far into the podcast, if you want me to, I'll create a Clone Wars watch list of like all the episodes that you should watch, because some of them are so good. I mean, like, the characters are amazing, the storytelling is amazing. They basically just threw everything at a wall, and like 40% of it stuck, and that 40% is fantastic, some of the best Star Wars stuff, but everything else sucks. But anyways, the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens, while it retreads a lot of the stuff from A New Hope, it's not the first movie of its kind to do something like that. It's still a really fun movie. It had a great setup, really engaging characters, really engaging action and story. The Last Jedi is a movie that I will forever defend. And before you rage quit and click off the video, let me explain. The Last Jedi is better than both of the other sequel trilogy movies for one reason. Its message. The message for The Last Jedi is that you need to learn from failure. In the movie, we see Kylo Ren doesn't learn from his failure, so he's constantly angry and he's constantly like a pouty teenager. And really, like, the only characters in the movie that matter are Kylo Ren and Luke and Rey. Everybody else kind of gets shafted. I'm not even gonna get into the storyline between Finn and Rose. All I'm gonna say is that Kelly Marie Tran is an amazing actress, and anybody who sent her death threats for being in a movie made for children should really go check if they're okay, because it's kind of rude to tell people that the things that people said to her. But, you know. Anyways, I absolutely love the last 30 minutes of The Last Jedi, because it's just, I love the Luke Skywalker stuff. Even the people who were going, like, in the movie, it calls out the people who thought of Luke Skywalker as this legend, like this perfect hero who's gonna solve everything. He's not a perfect person. Even in the original trilogy, Luke was never a perfect person. He made a lot of dumb decisions that got him in a lot of trouble. Why should that, like... It makes total sense that after going through all that work, that he just doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He can't deal with it anymore. But what does make sense is how Rey spurs him to take action. It almost mirrors The Empire Strikes Back. When The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda told Luke, don't go. Don't go, stay here, your training's not finished. Don't go. In this one, Rey is telling Luke that he needs to go. And even then later, Yoda comes in and tells him basically that you need to go save them. So in the final act of his life, Luke becomes that legend that he never wanted to be. He does, in fact, face down the entirety of the First Order with nothing but a laser sword. And it's awesome. The music is amazing. It's so good. I'm not even gonna talk about The Rise of Skywalker. It hurts me. It hurts me inside. Like, I understand how it happened, and I understand why it happened, but it just hurts me. But what I am going to talk about is the last movie on my top 5 favorite movie series. And for the last movie series, I don't know if it classifies as a movie series, but I'm classifying it as one. The Pixar movies. I love the Pixar movies. I've said that about everything on this list. The Pixar movies are amazing to me. From just Toy Story alone, if Toy Story was the only movie that they'd ever made, they'd go down in history as like a groundbreaking film company. I think once they were acquired by Disney, however, some of that creativity was distilled in favor of money. I'm looking at you, Cars 2. Not at you, Cars 3. Cars 3, you're okay. But I'm looking at you, Cars 2. You're awful. I hate you. Go die in a hole. Anyways, the Pixar movies, there's so many superlatives I can say about them. They took the strangest of stories. If you took one of these Pixar movies to any other animation studio, if you took Up to an animation studio, they'd be like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you bringing? Be serious, John. You need to be serious about your job." This movie about a old man kidnapping a kid to fly to South America and capture a bird is crazy, but it's amazing. It's one of the best. It's my favorite movie. It is literally my favorite movie. It has been since I've watched it. I watched that movie over and over again. My friends for my birthday brought me the adventure book and a Funko Pop of Russell, or not Russell. Oh my God, of Doug. Up is such an amazing movie. There's Toy Story. All 4 Toy Story movies are amazing. I remember when they announced Toy Story 4, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to ruin it just like they ruined everything else. They're going to ruin it just like they ruined The Incredibles. I'll get to that in a minute. But I was in Disneyland and they were airing like the first 20 minutes of Toy Story 4 in the theater right by Hyperspace Mountain. And I was like, you know what? Let's go watch it. Right away, I felt like I was a little kid again. From that moment, I was like, oh my God, the Toy Story movies are going to be amazing. And Toy Story 4 was amazing. It was so good. They've somehow managed to make 4 completely distinct movies that are all amazing. Now, Toy Story 4 did win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, and okay, I'm fine with it. Not happy about it, but I'm fine with it. But How to Train Your Dragon 3 deserved it more. That being said, I'm fine with it. It's fine. But How to Train Your Dragon 3 still deserved it more. Let's see, what other Pixar movies are there? There's WALL-E, Ratatouille. Cars 1 and 3 I think are really good. If unnecessary, but still really good. Cars 2 is trash. The Good Dinosaur is something that I'm never going to speak of again. The last movie I want to talk about, though, is Onward. I didn't want to watch Onward, to be honest. My little brother watched it. He thought it was really good. He really liked it. He was telling me, "You're gonna like this movie. It's really good." I was watching it with my family, and I don't know. It just, the first half of the movie just struck me the wrong way. It seemed really generic, like one of those low quality animated movies that companies will push out just for a few bucks. But by the end of the movie, I was like, they got me. I was obsessed with this story about 2 brothers trying to track down their dad, and then the little brother is always seen his older brother as kind of a failure, as a nuisance, as being annoying. By the time that they actually get to the point where they meet their dad, or they're able to bring their dad back for a day, I was taken aback, because the little brother realizes that the older brother is the one who's been there for him his whole life. And I mean, both of my parents are alive and well. They are fine. But for me, it kind of made me smile, because it was it was funny to me that my little brother was telling me to watch this movie over and over again. He was so excited that I liked it. And the movie is a story about two brothers. I it made me smile. Onward is a really good movie, and I'm really excited for Pixar's Soul. That's supposed to come out on Disney Plus on Christmas. I don't celebrate Christmas, but yeah, I'm so excited. Alright, this has been really fun. I'm probably going to do another one this weekend, another podcast this weekend. This should be going up on the 22nd of October. I'm going to be doing another podcast this weekend, hopefully with my friend Sydney. She has a Twitch channel. We're going to talk about music composition, assuming that she's available. We'll see. Plans may change. But yeah, this has been fun. I'll see you guys next time.